Hello and welcome. I'm glad you're here. I'm Michael Fudge. This is our 9th part in the series on mastering the SQL SELECT statement. In this part, we will explore SQL views. Views allow us to name our queries and then save them to the database catalog permanently. We can then use the view as if it were its own table, querying it with the SELECT statement. We'll begin by demonstrating how views work, how to create them and drop them and whatnot, and then end up with a fairly sophisticated real-world example. It ought to be fun, so let's get going. All right, here I am out here in Azure Data Studio, and I'm in TinyU again. And there's my students table that we've seen many times before. When you create a view, what you're actually doing is adding some metadata to the database itself. So under here, you'll see that there's tables and there's also views. Views are not really stored. The data in the views are not stored. It's just the SQL statement itself that accesses the data that gets stored. That's why it's called a view, like you're sort of looking through a window, and then on the other side of the window is the data itself. So views are just a layer on top of the tables. So let's, without further ado, make a useful view. I'm going to create, by the way, views are part of the data definition language. Which means that they have the create, alter, drop command set. So let's create a view, create view. And this is going to be, well, let's not make the view quite yet. Let's talk about what we're making. We're going to make a view that shows only undergraduate students in here. Right now, these are graduate and undergraduate students. So we're going to filter this data with a where clause on graduate, on not equal to graduate. So select all from students where student year name is not equal to graduate. Okay, and so these are just the undergrads. And now I might want to take this and make a view out of it so that if someone wants to start by looking at just undergrads versus grads, they can choose the view rather than choose the table. So I'll say create view v under ugrad students as, and then this select statement is what I want to create as the view. Now when I run this, I don't see any output, but what ends up happening over here is if you go over to views and refresh, you will now see that there is a view. And I can also query it with information schema. If I don't want to use this stuff on the left, I can say from information schema views. And you can get a list of the views, and you'll see the view there. And in here is the view definition. Eventually, I'll see my select. Select star from students, where student year name. See that? Okay. That's pretty neat. So you can still get at the underlying definition. Now, when you make a view, you might be wondering, what does that give you? I need to put a query separator in there because I have a create. So here's what you get. So this let's query the views with schema. This creates a view. Now I can use the view as if it were a table. Maybe I want to select from the undergrad students, and I might want to ask for the student first name, student last name, student year name, student GPA. So I can actually query the view as if it were a table. And really what's going on here is this is a common table expression, but this common table expression has been saved permanently to the catalog. So it's similar to what we did before with with, right, where I would say with this, but that's only within the context of the query you're writing. This allows us to add a degree of permanence to the queries we write so they can be reused. So a couple things to note about views is views get queried just like their tables. So views are like tables. For instance, maybe I want to display the student major here along with the name, and I want to sort these properly. I don't want to sort them freshman, senior, junior. I want to sort them freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. So we saw before that we had to do some joins to do that. So let's join in to the view, and we will join in the majors table on student major ID, and then I want to include the first name, the last name, the major name. Okay, that's step one. Let's see what we get. All right. Now I want to organize these by freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. And I'm going to actually put this first. You'll see there's going to be a rationale here that we'll get to eventually, promise. And then I want to join this table to the year names on year name, student year name. Like that. And then that way I can order by, and then I can order by sort order, right? And the sort order helps me preserve the natural order of these student year name column over here. Okay, and there you go. We have all the freshmen. And then, Robin Banks accounting, and then, 4.0 GPA, and then the other majors as well. Okay, so that gives you a good example of using a view, and views can be treated just like tables, no big deal. So you can also make views out of views and things like that. And let's sort of kick it up a notch and talk about like real use cases of views. A lot of times you'll make views when the queries are very complicated and you want to sort of simplify access to an extremely complicated query for other people in the database. So you might not allow them access to, for instance, the tables, but only give them access to the views that you create off of those tables. So let's do an example of that. Imagine, if you will, we are trying to create an undergraduate academic concerns report. And the basis of this report is we want to see the names, the major, the GPA, and the year. I'm going to put year first. Year of undergrads only. We want to sort them by year. So it's a lot of what we already did. But we also want to include a ranking in quartiles. That is, we want to take the set of freshmen or the sophomore or juniors or seniors, and we want to, by their GPA, lump them into, you're in the top 25%, the next 25%, the middle 25%, the bottom 25%. So we're going to use a window function here. And then, because it's academic concerns, we only want to deal with the bottom two quartiles. So this might be something that folks in the academic counseling department may need to access routinely, and you wouldn't want them to have to run the complicated SQL SELECT statement. Instead, what you want is a nice convenient view that they can access to do that. Or maybe they access the view in a query tool like Power BI or Tableau or Excel, and you certainly don't want them to have to write the complicated SQL SELECT statement. You would just prefer if they just picked out the name, V undergrad academic concerns report. They just click on that and they get what they need. All right, so that's what we're going to try and build next. We can start with this. This is a pretty good start. Now, when you go making views, generally you get the select statement working the way you want. Then you turn it into a view. There's no need to start with create, view, blah, and then only be disappointed when you run it and your select statement doesn't work or yield the output. So get your select statement working first. So we're going to start with this. And there's going to be a lot of issues that we're going to encounter along the way as we build this. And it's a really good learning lesson as to how the complexity of a query builds up rather quickly. It escalates quickly. And then you sort of have to think on your toes and adjust accordingly. So one of the things we need to do for sure is include n tile here. So n tile, and we want quartiles, and we want to do those over. We're taking a second pass over this. And what are we going to do? We're going to partition by student year name, and then order by student GPA descending. And this is going to be the GPA quartile by year. All right, and I'm going to make this I'm going to shape this a bit so it fits on the screen a little better. And then over partition by. There we go. All right, and that's the whole code. I'm going to run it. And you'll see here that these two students are freshmen, and they're in the top. They're the top quartile, then the next quartile, then the next quartile, and then the bottom quartile. So the report I want to only show students in the bottom two quartiles, so quartiles 3 or 4. So you might say, all right, well, I got to filter this on a where clause, right? Well, you've learned already that you can't do this. You can't say where GPA quartile by year is in 3 or 4. You can't do that. And if you forgot why you can't do that, I'll be glad to tell you. Because this code runs before the projection. Everything between from, not including order, all of that stuff, whether it's from, where, group by, having, all that stuff runs before the projection. So because of that, we have no clue as to what this column is. So you might say, well, I can fix that. I'll just use the window function in my where clause. So you're like, ha. See, I'm smarter than you, Mike. I'm going to use the window function here. It looks ugly, but it makes sense. You say, where, when you run this window function, the value is a 3 or a 4. And you say, ha. I got it working, Mike. See how smart I am? And you run that, and it says windowed functions can only appear in the select or order by clauses, which is something we mentioned before when we talked about window functions. So how the heck do you deal with this problem? Well, simply, this is where you need another common table expression. You need to use the with statement. You need to break this query up into 2 queries. So you need to say with, and let's give this a name. This is the hardest part. I'm going to call this ugrad quartile as, and now with a with, you have to use parentheses. And all of this stuff is going to go in there, and I take my where clause out now because that didn't work. I'm going to move this over like that. And because I want to make sure my head fits on the screen with the code, I'm going to do this. That looks good. Maybe I'll drop that here like that. Okay. And then what are we going to do with it? We're going to say select everything from ugrad quartile where, now we can say GPA quartile by year is in 3 and 4. See, this is why using table valued expressions and with is so helpful, is because there's some queries that are just darn near impossible to write without using them. And this just happens to be one of them. So I'm going to run this, and I'm going to get another error. And the error I'm going to get is, hey, you can't put an order by inside this table valued expression. Can't do that. Also can't do that in views, by the way, which are table valued expressions, common table expressions that you save to the catalog. So all common table expressions, you cannot store a sort with them. So you might say, well, I'll fix that. I'll just take this order by and move it down here, right? Done. But you'll see it's complaining because we are not including sort order as a column in this select statement. So now I have to add sort order here as a column in the projection so that when I come down here, I have access to sort order. Let's see if it works finally. So now it works, and you'll see, the sort order 1, freshman, 2, sophomore, 3, junior, 4, senior. And I got all the freshmen, and then only the bottom 2 quartiles. All the sophomores, only the bottom 2 quartiles. Now, I don't want to show sort order. So that means I now have to, you can see how complicated this is getting, right? I'm telling you, this is the nature of SQL, is you think conceptually how simple it is. But then when you go to write it, it ends up being pretty complicated. Welcome to the world of SQL. So I want to include everything but sort order. So I'm going to take these right here. That way you don't have to watch me type. And then I want to include with that GPA quartile by year. And let's see if we can make this fit a little better. Okay. That looks good. It's a pretty complicated query. Now this query, people are going to run with a certain degree of routine. Maybe they run this every week in the academic semester, or maybe they run it at the end of every academic semester, would make more sense, to find out which students are not doing as well as other students. So you might want to save this particular query as a view, because all this stuff that you see, woo, that's a lot, right? And you wouldn't want someone to have to run that. It's much easier to have them run the view. So let's make it into a view now. So I'm going to actually just copy it and then just come down here and say, create it as a view. Create view v ugrad academic concern report as, and then boop, all that stuff goes into my view. And it's giving me a complaint, but I think it has to do with the sort. It still doesn't like the sort. And I need to put a go probably up here. There we go. I don't know. Let's see if it does the sort. Okay, you can't use a sort. So we're once again back to having to rear sort order up into the client, which I knew that was going to happen. Okay, now we made a view. So what does the view give us? Now, if we look over here, there it is. I can then give someone rights to this, and if it says ugram, maybe I should drop it. Drop view ugram academic concern report. We'll batch that. So let's drop the view. Okay, I deleted it. And then now I'm going to create the right one. Grad. Okay, now it's right. There it is, ugrad. And I can run this view. Select star from ugrad academic concern report. And get the data that I need out of the report. That's views in a nutshell. One thing that I would like to mention, because I know it gets asked quite a bit, is can I update the data that I see in this view, like a table? Can I say something like update VU grad academic concern report, set student GPA equal to, I don't know, let's make it a 2.9999, where the student first name, let's pick this person out here, Lily Pads, because it's a short name. Student first name is, I think I might need to go in here. Oh, on ugrad. Student first name is Lily. Normally you would have their ID in here, but I didn't include that, and I don't want to go back and fix it. And student last name is Pads. What do you think? Gonna work? Gonna not work? The rule of thumb with updating or deleting or inserting into a view is, as long as you don't violate any integrity constraints, as long as you're not going to violate a null, not null constraint, you're not going to violate a check constraint, you're not going to violate a foreign key constraint or unique constraint, you're fine. You should be able to do the update. Let's cross our fingers and hope. It worked. Okay, now let's go take a look. Let's look for lily pads 2.999. There it is. See that? You can update a view so long as you do not violate any constraints. And to prove that to you, I believe I have a check constraint on that students table that says, GPA between 0 and 4. So let's make her GPA a 9.9. And this will violate a constraint and therefore not allow us to update the view. Okay, you also have to think about what you're updating in the view. You can't update things in the view that are not updatable to begin with because they don't have a column, like this quartile by year. It's not a column in a table, so you'd never be able to update that. But you can certainly update the data through the lens of the view right into the table if the column is that you're trying to update is a column in the table. Okay, you can do that. Let me change this back to 1.8. Okay, so that's SQL views in a nutshell. They are pretty much common table expressions that we save into the catalog of the database, so that makes it easier for other people to run sophisticated queries and not have to know all this crazy SQL logic to get the job done. They can instead just focus on the name that we give them. That's it. Those are SQL views. Thank you.